there's no one way that is going to be superior to another when it comes to building muscle. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the show. My name is Cameron. I have here with me
Daniel Lou.
Daniel Lou on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the things, all the socials. Today, we're going to talk about relevant topics related to the fitness industry. So whether you are trying to build muscle, lose weight, improve your performance, that is what this show is about. Today's topic of discussion is going to be hypertrophy.
Hypertrophy, baby. My favorite subject.
Your favorite subject, many people's favorite subjects. A lot of people want to build muscle and just get bigger, get jacked, look better.
Look massive, yeah.
Look massive, and having more lean body mass tends to make you look bigger, stronger, better. But there's a lot of stuff that people get caught up in that muddies the waters and makes it really freaking difficult for people to understand what is the most appropriate way to build muscle. I think I would start off with this. There's no one way that is going to be superior to another when it comes to building muscle. Building muscle, hypertrophy, is a response from the body from training stimuli. So all we're trying to do is create a certain response from the body, and that response is wide-ranging. You can cover all sorts of things, and you're going to stimulate that response. But what we're going to go into is I would say there's probably like 3 or 4 things in particular that we want to focus on when we're looking to stimulate that response. The first being is proximity to failure. Want to make sure that we're within close proximity to failure. Some of the numbers range. People are like, it's 3 reps, it's 5 reps. Anywhere between 3 and 5 reps seems to be sufficient enough to hit that response and get within close proximity to failure. The other is mechanical tension. The tension that you place onto your muscle, either by weight or range of motion or whatever that may be, is going to stimulate that response as well. Total volume load as well is going to be essential for building muscles. The amount of volume you're doing per muscle group, per workout, per week is going to also lead to muscle hypertrophy. And then fourth one, what would you say? Some people say muscle damage.
Yeah, the big 3 that I typically associate with muscle hypertrophy is metabolic stress, which is going to failure, like you said. Okay. Mechanical tension, yep. What you described earlier as well, and then muscle damage to be the last one. I personally see volume and load, as you're referring to the amount of exercise you do, the amount of sets throughout the week, as one of the modalities towards hypertrophy rather than like a key factor. Because yes, you do need a certain amount of volume and load, but really the stimuli you're seeking is really those big 3. How you get to those 3 stimuli is determined within the volume, load, tension, all the different factors.
So how would you define muscle damage then?
Muscle damage is my least favorite of the 3 because it prevents you from going back in the gym tomorrow.
Yeah.
I typically aim for metabolic stress and mechanical tension, my 2 big ones. I don't like to get to muscle damage because that, like I said, that prevents me from going back in the gym tomorrow.
Okay,
usually.
But what would be the definition of muscle damage?
So typically
so muscle damage to me is a bit finicky as far as being a prime, contributor to hypertrophy.
I think it's the worst one. but it is one for sure. I wouldn't argue that it's not one.
What would you consider muscle damage?
DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. So after you hit a hard set of biceps, you do biceps 5 times, like 5 sets that day, and tomorrow you can barely pick up your teacup. That's muscle damage.
Okay, but we have shown that most of the soreness, are you talking about soreness, delayed onset muscle soreness? Most of the soreness that we experience from exercise is coming from the connective tissue, from the fascia. 95% of that soreness is coming from the fascia, and that is what's going to limit someone's ability to come back and train hard again. So I don't necessarily know, that's why I'm trying to get into what is the specific definition of muscle damage, because we do have the damage that takes place on the actin and myosin filaments inside the tissues that fall off or whatever due to the the stress and mechanical tension that we place on them. But I don't know if that is again, if we're going to get lost in the weeds here, I don't know if that is a main contributing factor to hypertrophy. I do think that the total amount of volume that you are doing per workout per week is a key factor. Muscle damage seems just to get kind of a little unclear.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to say that the volume is not a key factor. It is 100% a key factor, but it's one of the modalities towards hitting metabolic stress and mechanical tension. I wouldn't describe it as the prime driver of it. Do you see the kind of the difference I'm getting from there? Dr. Andy Galpin talks about it in the podcast that you sent to me. He talks about the three main factors being metabolic stress, mechanical tension, and muscle damage. Muscle damage being the worst of them.
Yeah.
But I personally don't think as well it is a prime driver in muscle hypertrophy as well. Like I said, metabolic stress is a far greater driver of hypertrophy. I just think that, like I said, the volume and sets and reps, everything like that whole scheme is just one of the modalities that we go to achieving metabolic stress.
Okay. So you're saying that my thoughts on volume load being just a method is not one of the main drivers of what is going to stimulate the body to increase hypertrophy?
Essentially, in a nutshell, yes. So the way I'm looking at it is a sense of how versus why. So how or why does muscle grow in our body is a result of the three factors that I mentioned earlier: mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. What you're talking about, load, volume, and volume management, all that's reps, all that stuff, how we distribute it throughout the week, throughout our program, is how we induce those three things. So I'm not trying to diminish what you're talking about. If anything, I think it's the only thing that matters when it comes to hypertrophy. It literally, those things, load, volume, and tension, and like everything that we talked about, load and tension are the same thing. Everything that you said, the how is literally the only thing that matters in terms of muscle hypertrophy and growing muscle. But what I'm referring to is the why. Why does it happen in the human body? It's those three things. Like what you mentioned is how it's the modality, how we do it, and then you even get into the more minutia of how to do that in the sense of supersets, myo reps, all the different type of stuff is just additional modalities into getting to failure. That's all just stuff even below volume and load.
Okay. I definitely see where you're coming from. I think for my stance, it was just looking into the response from the body and the potency of the response from the body. So when we're trying to hit those three main things, I think their response becomes less potent the more frequently we train those things. And so in my perspective, volume load needs to be accounted for because the potency is going to diminish. And by resetting, we're going to be able to make sure that response is as potent as possible. And so for me, I see that somewhat as a why. But in hearing your argument, the why is those three things that we talked about. Mm-hmm. So proximity to failure, mechanical tension, and then muscle damage. I would go put those in like the top tier. And then following that would be volume load. And then we can go into the other methods and stuff would be the bottom tier.
Yeah. I'm not, if we're doing a tier list of all these things, of these things that we're talking about, I wouldn't even put those three in the tier because they're not things that we can do per se. I can't do those three things.
Okay.
They're just things that happen.
Got it.
How I can make them happen is by doing what you're talking about.
Okay.
So what you're talking about, literally, like I said earlier, is the only thing that matters. You're 100% correct, but we don't do those big three things. They just kind of happen as a result of what you're talking about.
Yes. Okay. So main things to focus on: proximity to failure, mechanical tension, muscle damage.
Yes.
Those are the things that we're going to stimulate muscle hypertrophy. We cannot do those to our bodies. They are just a consequence of what happens when we train.
Exactly. And then now what you're talking about, now how do we get there?
Yeah.
By volume,
load,
and good programming and taking those back off sets and everything, the back off blocks and everything you were talking about.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Okay. Got it.
The key point here, too, is we're arguing over something that we ultimately agree on, which I find very hilarious.
I know.
We're really arguing on whether or not we put it
honestly,
into the...
But to get us back on track here, we do want to talk about how we have those key factors, and anything else is just another method that you're going to add into hitting that certain training response. And it could just work for whoever. Do what you enjoy doing, whether it's you like doing 21s for biceps or something like that, as long as you're getting within close proximity to failure, partial range of motion, time under tension via slow eccentrics or negatives like some people like to do. All those things, as long as we're hitting those key factors, are going to lead to a hypertrophy response and allow you to build muscle.
Yeah. So I definitely do think as well that a lot of those things that people show on various different platforms, slow eccentrics, time under tension, partials, different like supersets, macro sets, myo reps, all this different type of stuff, like you're saying, I think is just a small part, like a small part of what actually induces hypertrophy. And all that really, really matters is getting those responses that we talked about at the beginning. The metabolic stress, the mechanical tension, all those different things that I just said are ways to get there.
Yes.
So, and I think that's where a lot of people get lost in the sauce. Like, oh, long length partials are going to build me more muscle. Myo reps are going to build me more muscle. Doing rest pause sets is going to build me more muscle. They all will. They all will. And I think that's the point we're ultimately trying to make here is building muscle is kind of idiot proof. It really is.
Yes. Thank you.
It totally need to stress the muscles and put tension on the muscles, and it's really just that simple. There's so many different ways, and I think a lot of people like to post the flashy stuff, like I do this, I do that, supersets to failure with like the back off sets, all this different stuff. It's minutia. You don't need to get that complicated with it.
It is, and I will say that you do have to make sure that the response to the muscle is intense enough and frequent enough too. So that's another big thing that we need to talk about with that, is that in the intensity can come from how heavy the load is or how close within proximity of failure we're hitting, and then the frequency, how often we're doing it per week. I think that if you really want, and again, okay, so really quickly, and this is where the volume load comes in. If you are somebody who has kind of just been messing around, doing whatever, look at your program over the last month or so, however long you've been running this program. If you want to increase the amount of volume doing on a specific muscle group, we have to look at what we're doing currently, and then we're either going to increase that amount of volume via that one workout or doing multiple workouts for that muscle group, or we need to back it off a little bit, because there has been some research to show that if you back off a little on the amount of volume you're doing and then you focus on something else and then come back and increase that volume again, you're going to re-stimulate that response into that specific muscle group and allow you to go back into a good hypertrophy building phase. So it's specific to you, the individual, how you're going to hit this training response. I can't say, oh, just go into 6 to 8 sets of chest per workout right away. I don't know what you've been doing beforehand. I'm not going to give that recommendation. You could have been hitting 20 sets per muscle group per workout. And if I say 6 to 8, well, now we just backed off significantly, which maybe you needed to do. Maybe you needed to back it off because you've just been ramping up for so long, and now you need to put that on pause for a little bit, focus on something else, then ramp back up again. It's also going to, minimize the risk of injury from an overuse injury. So it's specific to you. It would be highly recommended that you just take a look at what you were doing before, maybe do a little back off week, and then start ramping it up again.
Yeah, it's almost like in more of like a figurative sense, taking a step back to take a leap forward.
Absolutely.
Is kind of what it's like. It's taking a break, giving whatever muscle you've been hitting hard for 4, 8 weeks, whatever it is, a second to recover, get into maintenance and kind of figure yourself out, and then again push right back hard into it again.
Yeah,
really kick the door down.
In the strength training world, we do that all the time too, because you can't progress linearly indefinitely. It just doesn't work that way. The body is going to find a way to just halt your progress, and then you're like, man, what I was smoking before is now feeling super heavy. the body has to put a cap on it. And so what you have to do is you have to take a step back and then move forward again.
Mm-hmm.
So frequency and intensity in your workout, proximity to failure, how often you're training that specific muscle group is also going to play a pretty significant role in building muscle hypertrophy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I typically do that in my own training style as well. As within a certain block, I usually pick 2 or 3 body parts to emphasize, usually on the upper and lower area of the body to emphasize. That way, when you go into your next training block, you can switch the body parts around and give those other ones you were working in the last one a second to breathe, come back stronger the next time. You just kind of keep rotating, hopping back and forth. That's something I think is really overlooked that a lot of people don't implement in their own programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of wrap this up and give everybody a summary of what we're discussing for muscle hypertrophy so it can be as absolutely clear as humanly possible for you, we want to make sure that we get within close proximity to failure. We want to make sure that we have, significant mechanical tension on the body, muscle damage, muscle damage. And then we also need to make sure that we are hitting an appropriate intensity, which that can be proximity to failure. That is also dependent on you. We call it reps in reserve, or there's one more. I'm blanking on it right now. But anyway, RPE is reps in reserve.
Backwards. I thought that's what you were looking for. What were you looking for? So RIR, reps in reserve, then RPE.
Oh, yeah. RIR, sorry, reps in reserve, and then RP, rate of perceived exertion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And then, so we've got the intensity, we've got the frequency, making sure that you're hitting multiple workouts per muscle group per week. And if we can go into the ideal, the optimal sets, because there's a cap on how many sets per muscle group are appropriate. There's going to be a limit. We believe it's about up to 24 reps, I believe. I'm going to look this up in the study. And
asking the reps or the sets?
Sorry, sets. Yes, the sets.
Yeah, the sets is about 30. I think was the higher end. The optimal is going to be anywhere from 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week.
Okay, so that's 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week. Okay? And they're hard sets, too. They have to be within close proximity to failure. And then from there, do what you want to do. Do the other different variations and stuff, whatever you enjoy doing, hit those things, because the response is going to be wide ranging. As long as we hit those check marks, we're good to go.
Yeah. Those variations are just different modalities on getting to proximity of failure. That's all they are. That's really all it is. And it's not going to change how your muscle responds too much.
Yeah. And then eat your protein, kids.
That's a huge thing I think we just skipped over.
Yeah.
Protein consumption is going to be a massive factor when it comes to hypertrophy. And that's, to be honest, that's another video.
That is another video. We just wanted to cover the basics for building muscle hypertrophy. But yes, you do need to eat your protein if you want to build muscle. I don't care if you're vegan, plant-based, or carnivore, omnivore. You gotta eat your protein, whatever source you want to get that from. Get it. Do those things. You'll build muscle. You'll look good. You'll get stronger, and we'll all feel better.
Yeah, it's that easy, man.
All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.